Right now, we're looking at one of the absolute most explosive political mobilizations in India in recent memory. A massive, youth-led movement called the Cockroach Janta Party has literally brought the streets of New Delhi to a standstill. I mean, we're talking about everything from widespread exam leaks to thousands marching on parliament. This whole situation is moving incredibly fast, and the stakes for India's youth, they honestly couldn't be higher. Okay, let's dive into this.
So, how exactly did a single passing insult end up sparking a nationwide youth rebellion? It honestly sounds like a movie script, right? But an offhand judicial comment aimed at a few activists completely backfired. It ended up galvanizing hundreds of thousands of Gen Z students, turning them into this totally formidable political force overnight. Here is exactly how it all went down.
To make sense of all this chaos, we're going to break this explainer down into 5 key parts: the birth of the cockroach, the exam leak crisis, the march to parliament, fact-checking the protests, and finally, the government's response.
Section 1. Birth of the Cockroach. Let's look at where this very uniquely named movement actually started.
This movement escalated at just a staggering pace. Picture this, it's May 15th, and the Chief Justice criticizes certain people for turning to activism, actually calling them cockroaches. Well, just one single day later, a graduate named Abhijit Dipke founded the Cockroach Janta Party on social media. What started out as a bit of satire just caught fire immediately. By mid-June, they're demonstrating at Jantar Mantar, which is Delhi's traditional protest hub. A few days after that, prominent climate activist Sonam Wangchuk jumps in with an indefinite hunger strike, and boom, by July 20th, you have tens of thousands of students marching on parliament.
And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute genius of modern youth mobilization. Instead of getting defensive about it, they took a derogatory label, flipped it, and wore it as a badge of honor. The CJP essentially signaled that, hey, much like cockroaches, we are everywhere, and we are impossible to crush.
Section 2. The exam leak crisis. What was the actual spark that drove all these kids to the streets?
2 million. Just think about that number for a second. That is how many students take India's grueling medical entrance exam, the NEET, every single year. And they are all competing for just 130,000 seats. The mathematical pressure there is just staggering. Now imagine putting your entire life on hold to study for this, only to find out the exam was leaked to the highest bidder and the whole thing has to be scrapped. This massive systemic failure caused immense despair, and heartbreakingly, it's been linked to over 20 student suicides. It's this sheer devastating human cost that really ignited the outrage.
So the CJP drew a line in the sand with 3 unyielding demands for accountability. First, they want the immediate resignation of the Union Education Minister, Dharmendra Pradhan, for these systemic failures. Second, they are demanding the release of Sonam Wangchuk from what they are calling an illegal detention in a hospital. And finally, they are demanding 1 crore rupees, which is roughly $120,000 in compensation for the families of the aspirants who tragically lost their lives to all this pressure.
Section 3. March to Parliament. Because, all this boiling frustration had to go somewhere.
On July 20th, the CJP organized their Sansad Chalo, or March to Parliament. With the police denying them permission, a clash was pretty much inevitable. The central government snapped internet services in the area and threw up heavy metal barricades. When the protesters pushed forward, the police deployed tear gas and batons. Now, authorities argue this kind of force was absolutely necessary to protect the parliament complex, while the protesters, on the other hand, alleged severe brutality against peaceful students. By the time evening rolled around, 65 medical legal cases had been recorded at the local hospital.
To really grasp the human stakes here, listen to this quote from Harion Sharma, an 18-year-old protester who was out there. He said, "They might be trying to crush our futures and our democracy. Now, finally, the government is scared of us." This isn't just about a leaked test anymore, is it? It's about an entire generation fighting tooth and nail for their fundamental right to a fair future.
Section 4. Fact-checking the protests. Let's move to and see how this builds, because whenever a movement gets this massive, a whole narrative war just erupts online.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how quickly misinformation spread, with people weaponizing old footage. The fact-checking organization Boom actually dug into several viral videos. See that clip of police speeding up protesters? That was actually from Bihar back in December. Or the video of a man supposedly setting a car on fire? Nope, that was an unrelated traffic accident in Gaya. And that wild footage of Nihang Sikh warriors breaking down barricades? That actually happened a month earlier over a completely separate local dispute in Uttarakhand. It is absolutely crucial that we rely on verified facts here, rather than viral online outrage, to understand the reality on the ground.
Section 5.
The government response. With tens of thousands of angry youths flooding the streets, how is the state actually reacting?
So the crucial point is that this massive, undeniable turnout basically forced the government to engage. Prime Minister Modi stepped up and announced fast-track courts specifically to punish those involved in the exam leaks. On the political front, Union Minister JP Nadda initiated talks with CJP leaders, though, to be fair, the protesters are quick to point out that no firm commitments have materialized just yet. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has stepped into the ring, agreeing to hear pleas regarding the alleged police excesses from the march. It's definitely a multi-pronged response, but it really remains to be seen if any of this will actually satisfy the students.
It's also super interesting to look at the international reaction, or honestly, the deliberate lack of one. Pakistan's Foreign Office was asked about it and explicitly refused to comment on how the protests were being handled, officially labeling the whole thing as strictly India's internal matter. It really highlights how neighboring countries are carefully watching this domestic friction unfold without wanting to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
So all of this leaves us with one really pivotal question. What does this massive Gen Z mobilization actually mean for the future of Indian politics? We are watching a young generation that is highly organized, totally unafraid to co-opt insults, and more than willing to challenge the absolute highest levels of government. Whether this cockroach Janata Party remains a single-issue protest group, or if they evolve into a permanent, hard-hitting political fixture, well, one thing is for sure. India's youth have made it crystal clear that they can no longer be ignored. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Definitely keep your eyes on this developing story.